Today we are going to be speaking with Fabrizio Romano, who is the author of Learn Python Programming, published by PAC. The book is currently in its 4th edition, and Fabrizio has been associated as an author with PAC for almost 10 years. He holds a master's degree in computer science and engineering from the University of Padova and has been working as a professional software developer since 1999 and with Python since 2007. Today, he's the development manager of the SohoNet product development team. He has also given talks at EuroPython in 2014 and 15 and ProxCon in 2016 on the topics of teaching Python programming to every employee of a whole company, test-driven development, and testing with Python. In 2022, he also collaborated with Oxford University, teaching Python to professional software engineers and data students. In his free time, he's told me he likes to play the guitar, teach meditation, math, and Python programming. And today, he has kindly agreed to speak with us about his experiences with Python and share his rich insight working as a development manager. So first of all, welcome to this episode, Fabrizio, and thank you for agreeing to speak with us and share your insights with our subscribers.
Thank you. Thank you, Divya. Thank you for your time as well.
Okay. So are we ready to start? So the first question I have for you is, you've spent some years now working with Python. What's your journey with the language been like, and what originally drew you to it?
Okay. So back in the early 2000s, I was mostly coding in C#. I was building software for Windows machines. So I was using C#. I was also coding in Java and PHP and ASP.NET for websites and all that. And but in my spare time, I really I had more time back then, but I really liked to play on programming challenges websites and like competitive programming, this kind of things. And in one of them, in the forum where you discuss your solutions and stuff, I saw there was another Italian guy playing, Marco Beri, who eventually became my friend. And what I noticed is that he was using Python, and his solutions were conceptually like mine in C#. So the same algorithm, the same steps, but they were much, much shorter. And I was like, wow, this language seems really, really, concise. So we started talking, and he's a great enthusiast about Python. So I eventually ended up deciding to give it a try. And I just started basically learning by playing on those websites and solving challenges and stuff, which was really good because you can learn the various data structures that Python offers, because you have to, because you're doing algorithms, so all the collections, and you learn what is fast, what is not fast, and then this kind of what data types and all that. And then I started, considering switching and working with Python later on. But basically, what was the original inspiration is that it was really concise. It looked different because it's indented. You don't use curly braces to define scope. So yeah, that was what drew me to it.
What drew you to it? Do you remember the names of any of these websites, or where you sort of, started by playing around with it, just for the benefit of our listeners?
Sure. That particular one is called Project Toiler, and it's I think it's .NET. I used to be one of the admins there, and like creating problems. It's mostly math oriented, and so yeah, it's really interesting. So you can like, problems look simple, but with a brute force algorithm, it would never end if you were to run that. Okay. So that's
okay. Yeah, got it. So for someone looking to learn Python today, why would you say it is a good choice? What makes Python particularly well suited for certain types of programming?
Well, first of all, The learning curve is not steep. It's a language that it's practically English, so it's very readable and easy to learn the fundamentals. I mean, it runs everywhere, so it's portable. It's extremely coherent, logical. It's elegant. Guido van Rossum, who designed it, has a degree in maths and computer science, and you can really see that in the way Python was designed. To give you a little examples, there's languages where you have different types of collections. And if you want to know how many items are there in that collection, some of them you have to go dot size, some of them you go dot length, some of them you go dot items. Whereas in Python, you just put the collection in a call to the length function and it doesn't matter what collection is. So it's really easy to guess, even if you don't know. Sometimes it's easy to guess what's the function that you need to use or what's the method that you need to use. So it really helps not having to hold in your brain 7,000 different exceptions and all that.
Okay.
It's extremely, as well, concise. So on average, a Python program is about 1/4 the size of an equivalent Java or C++ program. There is an amazing community around, the globe. It's everywhere. It has an extensive standard library as well as a whole bunch of third-party libraries that are available to everyone on PyPI. And basically, it's very likely when you need to do something in Python that someone else has already built a library for that. So
yes,
when you write your programs, you can leverage other people's work, which is great because you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. It integrates well with other languages as well, so you can extend it. And I know Google for many years used Python as a kind of like glue to glue together different several bits and pieces written in other languages. Now it's even more prominent, the use that they do of Python. And it has become the de facto standard for data science.
Yeah.
And its beauty, I think, lies in, for me at least, if you study how Python leverages protocols like the generator protocol and the iterator protocol, the way it does polymorphism, the way you can do multiple inheritance and all this stuff, there's a lot of freedom and power in the way Python is designed. It's known as a language for adults because basically it's not constrictive. Like if you use Java, when I write Java, I feel a little bit claustrophobic sometimes because, and I realize it's because I'm used to writing Python. So
Python.
yeah. So there's, all these, when you put them together, it's a lot of qualities that Python has. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to go and look at the other side of this, would you know of any situations where Python is still a poor fit and where you'd recommend using another language? Can you imagine such cases?
Sure. The elephant in the room is normally the speed, even though, to be fair, today Python speed is rarely a problem. If you need maximal performance, normally you're better off writing directly in C or, adopting languages like Rust, this kind of stuff. If you think about the libraries like NumPy and Pandas, the data science libraries for Python, they basically they're compiled, so they work with C. That's why they are so fast. If you need that, that speed, then you're better off with a compiled language or something on those lines. But to be honest, I have never, in all these years that I've been using Python, speed has never been a problem for me. It might be due to the fact that I was not maybe working in sectors where speed is a crucial factor. Yeah. Other things is like, for example, if you do mobile app development, it's still not great. There's limitations. You're probably better off using Swift, or, there's a language now called Dart that has a framework called Flutter, I think. But in general, Java as well. You can probably do more because they've been in the game for a longer time and all that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but I mean, the language is always evolving as well, isn't it? Like these are its sort of limitations now. But I think even at Python 3.14, I was reading, and I think they're going to address some of these issues that you just sort of highlighted. So you never know. In the future, we may not be even calling these Python's limitations.
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's also, for example, if you need to rely heavily on multi-threading paradigms, Python has always historically had this little limitation imposed by the global interpreter lock. That means that basically there's only one thread ever running behind the scene. This is also being addressed at the moment, and there's different interpreters for Python that basically already remove the GIL. Many libraries like TensorFlow, they basically circumvent the limitations of the GIL for computation. Again, if you need that kind of paradigm, probably Java, C++, Go, they are languages that don't have this kind of. I think probably the last one is, of course, JavaScript and TypeScript and all that realm for front end. There are now frameworks that allow you to write Python that compile into React, they compile into JavaScript. So basically, you can actually write front-end application in Python now. It's a translation, so you don't really work on the code itself. You work on Python, and then it gets translated. So yeah,
that's true. So that sort of brings us very nicely to this question I have about Python 3.13, which introduced a revamped interactive interpreter and an experimental free-threaded mode. How do you see these impacting day-to-day development, particularly for teams working on large-scale applications? Like Charles.
So me personally, I almost never use the interactive interpreter because I use the Jupyter Notebook, which is a better looking version of the interactive interpreter. You run your things in cells, and you don't have all the issues that historically you would have had in the Python shell, because you want to go back and change a function that you've defined, and it's a little bit of a nightmare. So this has been addressed now. It's much easier to go back and change a function that you've defined. So it has become more powerful, the shell. This is really good if you need to bring up a shell and you're not on your local development environment. Maybe you're SSHing into a server or something like that. So you don't have the luxury of other tools like the Jupyter Notebook. So in those situations, it's great to have a shell that performs a bit better and offers multi-line editing and coloring and syntax highlighting and this kind of stuff. Because of course it makes your job easier. You have a little bit more help when your tool set is restricted by certain situations. You're not on your laptop or whatever. So that's really a welcome addition, I guess. The other side of things, the free-threaded mode, which we mentioned before as well, it's basically about removing this global interpreter lock, which has been discussed forever. It's really, really old topic. And so there's the potential performance gains in removing this log, especially if you have a multi-core system. As of Python 3.13, this feature is still experimental though, so
Right.
we don't really know exactly. But I have to say, even with the lock in Python, there's always been workarounds that as a developer you employ. There's libraries like really old ones like Greenlet or Eventlet that basically make you write code as if it was a little bit multi-threaded. This is really like for situations where your threads are IO bound. That means your CPU can do something else while there's a bit of your application that is waiting for an HTTP response to come back. So you can yield at that point, right? And so you can leverage this kind of situation, which is normally the case when you develop backend applications and, this kind of stuff. So that's easy. Now we have async IO. There is the threading library as well in Python. If you really need to leverage multi-cores and stuff, you can always use multiprocessing. It's just a little bit more complex than using threads, but that is perfectly fine. And as I mentioned before, the GIL is already circumvented when you use libraries like NumPy or TensorFlow or anything that is based on libraries like that. So it's not something that every Python developer cries, "Oh, I will," in desperation. Yeah, but it is a thing. It is a thing. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I was thinking, let's talk a little bit about your book now. What kind of problems does that book help you to solve? And what's the sort of the right kind of professional who should pick up Learn Python programming, and for what purposes?
Okay. So my book is called Learn Python Programming. So the title hints that is a book for beginners. Therefore, anybody starting their career with Python will probably benefit by reading the book. We have, I think by now, by the fourth edition, we have a balance between the theory and the practical chapters that are at the end. I think the balance, I'm really happy about it now. It took kind of 4 editions to get there. So we give all the foundation that a developer needs, all the foundational knowledge that a developer needs in the first part. And then we show interesting, hopefully, projects like how to build an API, how to build a CLI application, how to package your Python projects. I think one of my goals when I wrote this book, and this is true for every edition, was to write it in a way that would age well. Because, of course, technology books, they get old quite quickly. So I tried to also infuse in every chapter, whenever there was, the opportunity, something about programming and being a developer that is perhaps not necessarily completely coupled or tied to Python itself. I tried to put in a little bit of my experience as well as a developer in the book. So even if you are a seasoned developer, maybe there is still something interesting for you in the book as well. So I would say the book is suitable definitely for beginners, but also for like mid-level and senior developers. I have friends and people from, all over the world on LinkedIn. Every now and then I get a message saying, been developing these many years, and I, just out of curiosity, I read your book because I'm starting with Python and I learned this and that. So that's really nice that people sometimes take the time to send a message like that. Yeah. But hopefully the book will help you get started with Python, and if you're already a seasoned developer, help you anyways, because there's just a little bit more than just the language inside. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent. So it's a well-rounded, wholesome book, useful for people wanting to pick up Python. So, what would you say are like the minimum prerequisites for someone benefiting from the book?
Ideally, you have some experience, maybe with another language, or like you have an idea of what a programming language is about. But even if you haven't, I think the book is still useful, although it will require probably a greater effort in the beginning. But if you have an idea about what programming is, and maybe you've dabbled with another language or so, then you're equipped to start the journey with the book, because we go over how basically, like, we have a bird's eye view about Python, we explain how to install it, and then we start with the basics, the data types and functions and objects and all that. So it's all in there. It is a book that I think offers suggestions to go deeper. I think for me, this is really important, as well as when I mentor the people in my team, I always try to mentor them so that eventually they don't depend on me. They don't depend on a book. They don't depend on anything. They are completely independent and they can find things out for themselves. I try to help them develop a method that basically is a method that you can apply it to unblock yourself when you are stuck, which happens quite a lot when you are a developer tackling things. And the book does as well. I think we've put a lot of effort into trying to help developers learn this kind of methodology, or so that they can apply it when they are in need, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. And for our readers, we put the link for the book, and for our viewers as well, we put the link to the book in our comment section. And so now moving on, Fabrizio, to like what everyone is talking about these days, which is AI-powered coding assistant. Things like GitHub Copilot and Google's tools are becoming more advanced. From a team management perspective, how do you see these tools affecting how developers collaborate and write code?
Okay. It's undeniable that that's the direction where developers are going. We have to use AI. I think a developer that today refuses to embrace AI, they're probably going to be obsolete very soon, because that's just how our world works, I guess. So for me, as in my position at Sohonet, I got everybody in my team on Copilot, GitHub Copilot, so that they would all start using it and, become familiar with it and trying to understand how to leverage what it can give. It affects maybe not so much collaboration, the way people collaborate, but it does affect the way you write code. It can be very helpful. We also have people using Cursor, and we're always trying things out. Like there's Windsurf editor from the Codium people. There's the new Try editor from the TikTok company. I try to stay in touch with what's new and see, if there is anything worth exploring and all that. But basically, at the end of the day, I think the majority of my developers use Copilot. And Copilot can be really good, especially when you perform menial or repetitive tasks, like sometimes hard coding different test cases. It's really good in guessing what next test case could be. It's really good at giving you the structure of something that you're writing. Sometimes not, but most of the times I think it's helpful. Even when it's just a better IntelliSense, it's still helpful. So when you're performing certain editing, some refactoring or modifications in your code, it guesses quite nicely what you're going to do. So instead of having to rewrite a line by yourself, you can just go tab and there's that. So I think for those aspects, it's definitely something that I would recommend everybody to use. At least learn it, see what it can give you, and then decide for yourself. On the other side, I think part of, at least this is, my personal opinion, but part of my job, especially when I was full-time software developer, is to, smash my brain against a problem every now and then. And I think that's really beneficial for my thinking, because it forces me to explore different ways of thinking. It forces me to bring up and exercise skills like creativity or problem solving or memory. remembering something that is useful in this case. And so for me, relying too much on AI to be the tool that unblocks you, to be the tool that knows what's the next step, to be the tool that tells you how to solve a certain problem is a little bit risky, because, I still want to go to the gym up here. I still want to make that effort. I still want to learn and know things. So I think probably the best approach is for every developer to find the right balance between relying on this tool and still making sure that you're keeping your mind fit for work and for yourself. So you keep learning, you're challenging yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to find that balance. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think recently I was reading about a new library called Hinterval, if I'm not wrong. And that's basically to sort of enable developers or learners to use AI without losing their critical thinking skills. So to solve problems or to learn concepts in a way that they're not just it's not just like a robotic process, but it's sort of AI leads them towards the solution rather than tells them what it is. So that's definitely something to watch out for, especially for developers who are just starting out, isn't it, in their careers. Talk about tools and things. In our conversations before, you mentioned that you're not strongly opinionated about tools and languages. And so how has adopting this more pragmatic sort of tool agnostic mindset benefited you and your team?
Okay, this is a really good question, and I think it's something that is very important. You probably heard the saying, when the only tool you have is the hammer, everything is a nail. So I think even with language, if your vocabulary is not wide, you will not be able to articulate some of the feelings that you have because you don't have the language for it. So this is, I think, something really similar. If I only know Python, if I only know one framework, then whenever a problem arises, I will try to understand how to fit the tools that I know so that I can solve the problem I have with those tools. But maybe it is the case that there's other tools that are better suited for this problem or for this situation. And so I think not being opinionated means that when a problem comes up and you know a bunch of tools and you know the strengths and weaknesses of all of them, it's more likely that you can choose the right tool for the job. But if your mind has that bias that strong opinions give, then you might not even see the right tool for the job. It might not come up because you're more worried about how do I make it work with this tool that I like, that is really powerful and that I'm comfortable with and all that. So in my team, I try to help the guys go for the best idea. So we try to reach the best idea rather than my idea. And normally the best idea is the product of a conversation. And a conversation involves more people, and therefore there will be more different approaches, different points of view, different knowledge, different experience. And so someone will like FastAPI more than Django. Someone will say we should use it Flask or whatever. We should go with this or that. And so at the end of the day, I think conversation helps a lot. But I think a developer who wants to be a good developer in their minds, they should steer clear of having too many opinions. They basically cloud your judgment a little bit. That you got like narrow vision.
So let's talk a bit more about the kind of role that you're in right now, which you've sort of transitioned into over the past 3 years. What has this shift to a development manager role been like for you? And what's been the biggest challenge in leading developers?
So I've been working as a developer for a long, long time. I started when I was 16. And there's a point where, at least for me, developing code wasn't giving me the same satisfaction that used to give me in the past. And I found myself more drawn to helping people and developing people rather than just code. I still love to write code, of course, but I think I get more enthusiastic about helping people and helping people grow. I think for the past maybe 11 years, I've been in one shape or another. I've been leading teams and being line manager of developers and working with them. I joined as a team lead, and then 3 years ago, I went on to be the development manager of this team. It was completely natural. It's just a natural move. I think the skills that we learn as software developers, they're not necessarily confined in the software development realm. They can transfer in life. If you learn to approach a problem from different angles, if you learn to break it down into smaller problems, if you learn that maybe the tool you're using is not the right tool for the job. These are just a few examples that you can think, wow, that's also really good advice for life. You know, I have a big problem in life. Why not break it into smaller problems and all this kind of stuff? So for me, it was completely natural. And it all, I think, comes from an experience that I had when I was teaching mathematics, maybe 25, 30 years ago. I can tell you about it if you want.
Yeah,
There was this, okay. I think to this day, this is probably the one memory about being a teacher that I cherish the most. I'll make it really short. I think it was, she was like 11, 12 years old, maybe, a little girl. And she would not understand how to work with fractions in mathematics. So, and everybody tried, her dad, her mom, her teacher, the family friend who knew mathematics, and everybody had the same opinion that she was not smart enough to understand mathematics. So her mother was talking to my neighbor. My neighbor just so happens that knew that I was giving private math lessons. So she ended up having a lesson at my house at some point. And I was trying to get her to do 1/3 plus 1/5. And of course, you have to move everything to 15. You have to do the least common denominator. So you go to 15s. And this little girl, she studied the whole book. She knew the book by heart. She knew the rules by heart. But she didn't make the connection. Why are we doing these things? So I asked her, what is one banana plus one banana? And she said, well, it's two bananas. And then I said, what's an apple plus an apple? And she was like, it's two apples. And then I asked her, what's a banana plus an apple? And for a moment, she was like, it didn't make any sense. I don't know. But then she said, two fruits. And I said, yeah, that's great. So what did you do there? Bananas and apple, they don't go together. You have to find another way to represent them so that you can add them up. And we do the same with 1/3 and 1/5. There's not the same object. So we need to find another way to represent them so that we can add them up. And in that moment, she had a light in her eyes. She was like, she had a broken voice. She's like, I understand. So for me, that moment for her was realizing that I'm not stupid. It's just everybody who tried to explain this to me went down the same road. So here's the rule. Here's what you need to do. Why don't you understand that? And as a teacher, I try to use another approach, which is if this road doesn't work for you, there's no point in insisting. You just need to find another way to explain the same thing or to go about the same problem until we find a road, a path, or a reasoning that works for your mind. That's the important thing. For me, that was the great gift that I got that day, because the satisfaction you get when you help another human being realize their strengths and that they're not stupid, and you plant a little seed. That is something that I still have with me today. And I try to work in the same way with my team at Sohonet. Try to use the same approach. So for me, this comes really natural. It's something I'm very passionate about.
Oh, it's wonderful. You must have a great deal of empathy because I sort of identify with that child quite a bit. I struggled with math like all my life. The times when I've had a good teacher who's sort of, tried an innovative way to explain things to me, it has really made a world of difference. And yeah, I still feel like quite stupid for not understanding math entirely, honestly. That was a great story. Thank you for that.
No,
Okay,
yes.
now, yeah, now we're going to move to the big question, which again sort of stems from an interaction we had earlier. You said that technical challenges are rarely the biggest problem in software development. Um, so what did you mean by that? And what are some of the more critical non-technical challenges that teams face today?
Sure. This is a really good question, I think. At Sohonet, for example, we work on cutting edge technology, work for the media industry, and sometimes we work on something that nobody else is doing. So there is a technical difficulty in doing some of the things that we do, but that's a small part of a product that still has a front end, still has a back end that works as a platform or as an API, saving data. And all that is not hard to do. It takes skill, but a senior developer who approaches that will not find, themselves in big trouble because all of a sudden I don't know how to make a request to an API. That's some stuff that we know, and that is, most of what developers do. Every now and then you've got a technical challenge, but it's not an everyday thing. So you know the language, you know the stack, and you've got your algorithms and all the knowledge that you need. But at the end of the day, you're not working alone, you're working a team. Your team has a process. This process is not the same that other departments use. Sometimes you work remotely. There's interactions with people who don't understand why you're doing this thing or the way in which you're doing it, maybe from other teams or from other departments. So those, I think, are the real challenges. So, for example, one challenge is you've got 11 people and not all of them have the same idea of what is our process in mind. So when this is the case, I act on certain tasks, and the way I exercise the process that I understand, as I understand it, is different from your way. So every now and then I do something that you don't understand. And you ask yourself, why is Fab doing this? So that means we need to have a conversation. Maybe I interrupted your flow, something like that. And then we need to find out who wins, my way, your way. So for me, process is a crucial aspect of our work. And it's so important that every developer has the same process in mind so that my actions are predictable to other people. So we don't need to have a conversation about why I moved the task from here to there. And we all know why, because it's our process. And in order to do this, I think you can go about it in different ways. Some I don't like, some I like. So some team leads and all that, for example, in my experience, I've seen they have a very strict process, lots of rules, lots of little constraints and all that. And with the idea that imposing this rigid scheme will enable the developer of maybe not taking care of the process because you have your rule, you do your thing, and then you can develop. But what I like to do, maybe that works for some teams, but definitely not for my team. For my team, I set up a process that is flexible and it's based on values and guidelines. Very, very few rules. And the reason is when your values are to be open, to be focused, to be committed, to be respectful, to be courageous, and all that, whatever action you decide to choose, You can always use your values as the litmus test to judge, is this something good? Is this something according to my process or not? This is how spiritual disciplines work. For example, if you take a look at the Japanese lineage of the system of Reiki, for example, it's also based on 5 principles, you know, anger, worry, gratitude, compassion, and all that. So when you do something, you go like, is this something going to make me more angry, more worried, more grateful, less grateful? Is it compassionate? And you can decide, okay, this is a good thing to do or not a good thing to do. So I think at work, I see it a little bit similarly, because we have values. We use Agile, so we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, which means instead of having a lengthy back and forth on a pull request on GitHub, just have a conversation at some point. When it's more than 2 comments, back and forth, just sit down with the person, have a conversation. Written text makes everything more difficult because you lose the tone of voice, you lose the face expression, you lose the body language. So the process that I try to set up for my teams is quite flexible. And because it is quite flexible and based on values, it requires everybody to keep their mind engaged. They have to think about how they work. And this for me is very, very important. We go back to the same topic that we were discussing with AI. I don't want to give you a process that makes you into a robot, that you just execute and you don't activate your thinking, as well as your creativity, as well as your innovation. So I want the guys in the team to own what they do. I want them to think. I want them to be engaged. And I think having a set of values and guidelines is more than enough so that there's predictability in the way we work, but people can still express their talents in a way without causing issues for other people. This is just one aspect that has nothing to do with the language that you use at the end of the day. This is how you regulate your work. And it's so important to nail it well. Another thing is stress. Like we all need to deliver things for yesterday. So we're always under some sort of pressure. This is not Sohonet being bad or whatever. It's just every company is like that.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere. We all know stress very well, I think. There's negative emotions like frustration, like anger. They often come. I'm really lucky. My team is just all the 11 people. They are really good people. They get along well together, but sometimes in interaction with other departments who maybe don't understand the way that in which we work, maybe there is a little bit of friction. I have many examples in my mind from other companies as well. So we need to, I need to tend to that. That means I need to pay attention. When I am in a meeting, I need to pay attention to the body language of the people. I need to pay attention of the subtle variation of their tone of voice. I need to pay attention how they write on Slack, what they write, how quick they react versus are they responding to things and all that. And then if I realize or, have the feeling that there is a problem, then I sit down with the person and we try to address the problem. That means, for example, to more than half of the people in my team, we had sessions where I was teaching them some meditation so that they learn how to immediately recenter themselves when something has shaken them up, there is a little bit of stress. We do a lot of work in one-on-ones. I try to teach them the basics of emotional intelligence or how to cope with certain type of negative emotions that are disturbing. When you get angry, and angry means all the different shades from upset, to frustrated to angry. When you are in this mood, it provokes a change, like a chemical change in your body. You start using your sympathetic nervous system. That means you engage the fight and flight mechanism. That means tunnel vision. It means consuming more than you need to consume. It means the natural functions of your body don't really work that well because you are in this emergency mode that you keep stimulating if you don't learn how to deal with stress. So that's a big problem because it leads to health issues and all that. So we learn all this, and then we try to address what is the root cause of the stress. Because normally the root cause of the stress is that guy did this thing that I don't like, right? So that's not really the root cause of the stress. The root cause of the stress is I am not willing to accept that guy did that thing, right?
Yes.
The problem with this is that very often acceptance is confused with passively putting up with things. If I tell you accept that this is happening, then most people would think, okay, I just have to put up with it without doing anything. But the point is not this. When you accept that this is reality, this is what's happening, and you train yourself to stay calm and relaxed in that situation, then your mind is in the best position to find a solution for that problem. This is something you learn from martial arts as well. If you want to be able to quickly spring into action, you need to be fully relaxed. So if you learn how to keep your mind relaxed, and acceptance plays a big role in this, then a relaxed mind is a creative mind. A relaxed mind can do problem solving, and also your health is better as well. So we try to acknowledge all the problems and we try to find solutions while at the same time trying to keep the mind relaxed and calm so that everybody's happy. And because you're always going to have issues. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be stress. So I try to mentor my guys as much as possible on how to deal with it in an effective way that makes you healthy, happy, productive, and helps you solve that problem. So there's a lot of this work that goes on, teaching about how the mind works, emotions, and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. That was like really enlightening for me personally as well about, centering yourself and staying calm in stressful situations. I completely agree with you. Into development manager, was this like a conscious shift? How did that decision work out for you? And for others who may be wanting to transition similarly, what would you recommend? What pathway would you recommend?
Okay. So for me, I just, when I started using Python as my main language, I just used it for a little bit of everything. I just loved writing Python code, and I explored with different. So I built some software, I built some websites, and then tried different frameworks and all that. When I was in Manila in 2014, 2013, I don't remember, but those one of those two, I was using. Back then, it was still called, I think, the IPython notebook. It was not even the Jupyter notebook. I was using that to teach. So I was using Python as a tool instead of doing slides, because I was working for a company that was in social media advertising, and we had a whole department of analysts in Manila, and I was tasked to go there for 2 weeks, teach them Python and a little bit of data science with pandas. I was using the notebooks there, and as well as, in many other situations. But so for me, what drew to me was curiosity, basically. Curiosity to learn all the different aspects of it. If someone is starting today, given how very often we need to be specialized in what we do, because computer science and software engineering is now such a vast realm that it's really hard to know everything, right? I would recommend one to be developer or someone who is passionate about this particular career, to make sure they assess their personal interests. So they find out what is it that excites you the most. Are you about websites? Are you a front-end guy? Are you a back-end guy? Do you like, for example, like DevOps, do you like to tend to an infrastructure that supports a product rather than building the product itself? So just make sure you appreciate all the different aspects of what it means to be a software engineer and see which is it that attracts you the most. That's probably your best bet. In order to do that, you need to have a holistic view and understanding of all the disciplines that are involved. So I would recommend to explore different domains just to make sure that you're not choosing the best out of 2 choices, but actually there's 10 choices. And maybe the best choice for you lies in the other. Then we need to be pragmatic, I think. So it's also important to consider the market and which job opportunities are there. Because at the end of the day, you want to have that satisfaction in your career and you want your work not to feel like work because you're doing something that you're passionate about. But you still have to pay rent, you still have to buy a house, and you can't do this kind of thing. So it's good to understand, what type of career path you can have. Of course, I would recommend people to look inside and understand what are their strengths and where do they see themselves being successful as well. And just learn as much as you can, participate to open source projects. There's plenty of really cool open source projects out there on GitHub. There's communities around in Discord and other channels. It's very easy, I think, nowadays to gather information. There's people who are starting today are very lucky. When I started, it was not like that. We still have those things called libraries that with books inside to do research. We didn't use ChatGPT to do research. And the different fields are, there's web development, there is data science, of course, machine learning, AI, all those things. There's automation, there is DevOps, and game development as well. There's quite a lot of games made with Python today, which is a very interesting area as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was thinking more like, if someone wants to become a development manager like you, what kind of sort of moves do they need to make, when they're starting out in their career, if they've built up a bit of experience? What kind of skills should they start picking up to sort of transition into that kind of role?
Well, this is actually a really good question because I think, have you ever heard the say, people don't leave companies, they leave managers?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the natural progression for many developers is that of becoming a manager of some sort or a lead or whatever. And sometimes those people don't really have the skills, the people skills. They don't really have the skills to be in that position. They are an amazing developer, but not really good people person. So there's lots of this that I've seen. I've also been really lucky and I saw really good managers in my career. But this is definitely a problem that I think our industry has, because if you are so inclined to logical thinking and machines and all that, and you don't have passion for helping other people grow and mentoring other people grow, then you probably shouldn't go down the manager. So for me, it's not so much skill set that you acquire. You can, of course, train as a coach. You can train as a mentor. You can train as a teacher. You can do all this training, but underneath all this, there should be something already within you that would underpin the whole thing. And this is, in 2 words, is about caring for other people. At the end of the day, my job is to make sure that I do my best to help the people that I manage so that they are healthier, they're happier, they grow as professionals, they hopefully grow as people as well, because again, the skills are transferable. And if I have to do this because it's my job, because someone gave it to me, it gets very tricky. It gets very difficult because people are not logical as machines. It will require
No.
you to, some effort. You have to listen. You have to find out how every individual is unique and how they communicate. What's the strategy and all that. So it's something you need to have within yourself. You need to want to do this. I want to work with people. I want to help people as much as I can. I want to plant as many seeds as possible because I think that's really good use of my time. Before my career, before the money that I might be making, before whatever recognition, before all this, I really want to help. I really want to, that's something that I think it's worth investing my time and putting the effort. So if you have this within yourself, if you like to work with people, if you like to help, then you can, I think,
Option.
yes, that's a good option. And I think having a software development career before landing a job like this is also very important because it will help you understand the difficulties that the people you manage go through every day. If you've been there, if you have that experience within you, you know what it means to be stressed because you have tight deadlines. You know what it means to lose an afternoon because you went down a rabbit hole on a problem because of your ego instead of asking someone in the team for help. So if you've been there and you've seen all these things within you, then you can be effective when you help others. So I think it's still important to have that progression. I wouldn't say it is a natural progression for everyone. Some people are not interested in this kind of career because they're naturally inclined to, yeah.
Yes. No, absolutely agree with that. So basically, if someone wants to progress or transition into this kind of thing, they need to put in the work and evolving into better human beings first, and then they would be successful.
In a way.
Managers, that I guess that's true for all managers, really. It does really help if you have empathy and understand pain points. So we're almost towards the end of our conversation, Fabrizio. But before we end, I thought we just cover one more Python-related question. Because you've been working with the language for so long, I was just wondering, like looking back on all the years you worked with Python, all the different versions that came out since Python 1 and 2, what do you think have been the most pivotal moments that transformed your personal workflow?
Okay. Good question. I think there's two aspects. One is how Python evolved, and the other one is how all the tools that are part of the stack evolved around Python. So Python, for example, there was a few years ago, we went from version 2 to version 3. Those years were painful because you wanted to use Python 3, and then you realize I need to use this library, and it hasn't been ported to Python 3 yet. So you couldn't. Today, we're over. Python 2 is legacy. It's very hard to find Python 2 in projects. I think some still out there, of course, but I haven't worked with Python 2 for quite a few years now. I think 9, 10 years, something like that, luckily. Python 3 brought on things like full Unicode support. And then over the years, for example, libraries like the mock library was ported into the standard library. It's now, you've got unittest.mock, you've got type annotations, you've got asyncio, you've got really good stuff like data classes, you've got structure pattern matching, you've got built-in support for virtual amps since quite a few years ago. In general, I would say Python is better, it's faster, it's more feature-rich, but I wouldn't call any of those improvement dramatic. Some of those were quite important milestones, and they are important things, and I appreciate all the effort that the community and the people who develop the language are putting in to make it faster and better and all that. But when I think about my day-to-day activities, I use an IDE to write my code. And IDEs, for example, have improved a lot. Now I use VS Code, but I used to have Komodo. I used IntelliJ IDEA. I used NetBeans. I used Sublime. Now I've been on VS Code for quite a few years. I think it's the one that suits my way of coding the better. But also, like in the last maybe 10 to 15 years, we've seen things like Django and FastAPI be born and become widespread all over the world, develop communities, improve. We have the Jupyter Notebook, as I was saying before. Even when I was teaching on behalf of the Oxford University, I never do slides. I always do notebooks. All my materials are in a notebook, because if I'm talking to a student and saying this function does this and that, and they go like, I don't understand, I can immediately access that code and craft something that will help them understand what's going on. A slide cannot do that. A slide is static. Whereas a notebook it's something that is alive, and I can play with it in class when I teach. So having tools like Jupyter Notebook, and I use it every day, you have to double check something. Yeah, it's faster to use Notebook than going to the documentation sometimes. Then we had things like PyTest library, which makes it a much more pleasurable experience to write tests with Python, things like Celery for background tasks. And then, of course, if you think about 10, 15 years ago, we were deploying on actual computers, actual machines, servers that we had somewhere in some warehouse. Then we moved on to virtual machines. Now everybody's using containers. So the whole Docker thing, Kubernetes, as well as Ansible and the whole AWS infrastructure with Terraform and this kind of languages, they revolutionized everything. I'm writing a library in these days that will be used as a step one in a transformation for one of our products at SohoNet. And I need some code to talk to RabbitMQ. So I just have a RabbitMQ container, and I don't need to clog my laptop with Postgres or Redis or Rabbit or like many different databases, things that at some point start clashing with one another. I just spawn containers up and it's done. So that was a revolution. And back on the Python side of things like Black, Flake8, Ruff, iSort, all these kind of tools that you use to format your code. I'm an old guy. I still know PEP8 by heart. PEP8, if you don't know what it is, it's the Python enhancement proposal that basically it's the guidelines on how to write Python, the style, and how to write Python so that it's Python and it's not another language with a little Python costume on. But now you can write just use tools to do most of that. I rarely format my code. I just know a keyboard shortcut, and Black gives a pass to the document and it does it for me. I think the advantage of understanding PEP8, there's still a good point in learning that, because at the end of the day, you're learning your language, which is super important. But I am much faster if I delegate the makeup to a tool like Black, and then I have another tool that checks if have I forgotten some unused imports, have I done something like that. So it really saves a lot of time to use these tools, and they are ubiquitous nowadays. Everybody's using them. And lately there's, and this is funny because it's actually written in Rust. There is this tool called UV, which used to be called, I think, Puffin. That basically it aims at replacing tools like pip, pipex, pip tools, pyenv, poetry, virtualenv, twine, all these kind of libraries under one tool that does all. and it's blazing fast, and I use it all the time. I still use other
Okay.
tools in combination, but there seems to finally be a pull towards a normalization or a unification of the tooling around Python, which is one of the most difficult aspects for beginners, is like, how do I set up 5 different Python versions on my machine and use all of them according to what I need? That's tough to do. And it's not something that is suitable for chapter 1 on a Python book for beginners, which is why in the book we try to encourage the reader to go and read this or that website, because they will learn a little bit about that. But I think this aspect of Python, getting set up on your machine, handling versions, handling virtual amps, it's probably the hurdle that the beginners have to overcome when they get started with the language. Yeah, so it's good that there is some momentum in fixing this and simplifying things for them. And UV is one of these tools. It's definitely recommended.
Yeah. Again, people are talking about it a lot and adopting it as well. So, that was a brilliant answer, Fabrizio. I think that sort of touched upon a lot of useful things that I think people who've been listening in could sort of go and explore if they're just starting out with Python, especially. So, thank you for that, and thank you for giving us the time to sort of explore your experience with Python and your professional experience as a development manager. Everything that you've said has been of great value to me, and I'm sure to anyone else who's going to be listening or reading later on. So thank you again, Fabrizio.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you also for inviting me, and thank you for your time as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.